Hey guys, it's Ryan Alford. Welcome to the latest episode of the Radical Marketing Podcast. Pretty stoked for today. We kind of come in and out of agency and marketing world, and I think this is about as straight line as it gets. But Steve Babcock, really excited to have you on today's episode.
Awesome. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So Steve is the current and the founder, and no, you're not a title guy, of Made in House, and the former chief creative officer of VaynerMedia. Spent time at CPB, some of the who's who's in agency world, but all around creative dude. Is that fair to say? Or
I think that's probably the more accurate title. Or maybe even just all around dude.
Dude, yeah, more dude than anything else. So, cool, man. Really excited to have you on, and we've been talking the last couple of months just here and there, but excited to kind of tell and hear, our guys, our audience, to hear some of your story and background, especially for both people. We have a lot of people, the agency people maybe in the Southeast or, a little more regionally based, and, they know the VaynerMedia name and Gary V and stuff. But I think hearing the width and depth of your experience and, kind of just some of your perspectives on where the market was headed. It's like pre-COVID and post-COVID. So I definitely want to get some of your takes on that. I don't know that it's changed definitively. Marketing is marketing, branding's branding. I think we both have a love for content and branded content, and we'll talk about that. But I do want to get your perspective, because it's kind of a crazy world out there, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, cool, Steve. I'd love for, let's just start, right down the path. I'd love for people just to kind of give, your history and background in the agency world and marketing, and maybe just some of your general philosophies, but maybe just kind of that history timeline and some of the campaigns you've worked on. You just kind of tee up that for everyone.
Sure. Yeah. I grew up, I was born and raised in a one stoplight town in southern Idaho. Which a lot of people think, wait, Iowa? No, Idaho.
The second ad mecca of the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I grew up there, and kind of my whole life. And during my childhood was very interested, kind of oddly enough, in like film. I was the youngest of 5 kids, and we would make like home movies, like Super 8 home movies, like in the 80s, and VHS. And I was really into like editing and things like that at a young age. Like, this is back when you were editing with like 2 VCRs, and I know half of your listeners are like, what is a VCR? Just Google it. But I was always into that. I was always into music, art and design and those things. But I had no idea really in that area that like advertising was a job. In my mind, I was like, I'm going to be a director. I'm going to go make movies. Steven Spielberg, and so I went to school at the University of Utah in just kind of down the road. It was like the closest university. I was also, to be fair, a pretty avid snowboarder. So that really influenced. I was like, I'm going to go there and just snowboard, and I'll go to like their film department. And while I was in school, I needed a job, kind of like a part-time job. And a friend knew somebody who worked at the time as the largest agency in that area. It was called DSW Partners. And they were famous for making the Intel Inside, the little do. It was at the time, it was like a big agency. And I remember I got an interview and I walked in there, and I was just like blown away, because it was like, the walls were all painted groovy colors, and people were dressed in like flip-flop. I don't know. I was like, this is a job.
Yeah.
And anyway, I got the job, and it was to work in what was called the business center. It was like the mail room, and I did all the odd jobs. It was kind of like everything guy. And it was a great job because it allowed me, it was very flexible. I could go to my classes, I could come back. But what was really cool is it really introduced me to advertising. And when you're the mail person and you're sorting and delivering everyone's mail, you get to know, and back in the day, this is kind of pre-email, you get to know everything about everybody based on their subscriptions and the things that they get. Anyway, I realized, like, wow, this creative department was really cool, because this agency kind of, everybody sat in their department. I'm like, this is amazing. I love these people. And I befriended them. And kind of long story short there is that agency ended up having a scholarship contest for all students in Utah. and you could submit a portfolio. And because I was just a part-time employee, I was eligible. So I befriended an art director there who let me use his computer at nights. So I just kind of taught myself Photoshop 4 and put together a portfolio of just horrible fake ads. And I ended up winning the contest. And then they gave me a job as a junior copywriter, which I was surprised by because I thought I was trying to be a art director or a designer, but I just went with it. And that was that's how I got into, so they would let me finish school and et cetera. But I was all of a sudden, I'm like, I guess I'm in this industry. And I liked it. And I just kind of kept going. And so I was in the Utah market, finished school, got married. I was also in a band. And so that was sort of pulling me both ways. But eventually, as does happen, the band dreams kind of died. And that's when we said, well, let's take this a little more seriously. We moved out to Colorado, where I was in Colorado for 10 years, and I worked at Crispin Porter and Bogusky. And when I left Crispin Porter and Bogusky, I was one of the 2 executive creative directors there. And then I took a really fun opportunity of an agency out of San Francisco had reached out. They needed a creative leader, but they also were interested in building a second office in Boulder in Colorado. So I was like, this is cool. I get to kind of do a startup thing, but with training wheels. So that was really, really fun. Very different, going from this mecca of Crispin where there's, hundreds and hundreds of people to all of a sudden I'm going to Target to get the toilet paper for the office, but it was really fun to learn how to grow an office from pretty much nobody to around 30 to 40 people. And then I got a call from this guy in New York who I'd never heard of, named Gary. And I didn't know the agency or anything about it. And again, this was maybe, I guess, probably 5.5 years ago now, or maybe 6 years. I can't remember, but
2014, 2015.
Yeah, it was 2015. Yeah. And summer of 2015. And we, my initial reaction was no thanks. Like, New York's not for me. I don't know who you are. VaynerMedia it just wasn't on my radar. It didn't sound like something that I was interested in doing. And we spoke for about 6 or 7 months, and, Gary's the best salesman I've ever met. And the proof of that is all of a sudden my family and I are packing up and moving to New York. And so I took that job, that opportunity, which was really a fun challenge, to be the first chief creative officer of VaynerMedia. And when I walked into those doors, it was really, I was very taken aback because it didn't look or feel like anything I'd ever experienced. It was chaos. I always would call it like a pleasant Lord of the Flies, because it was nice, but it was just as chaotic as possible. And I got excited. Eventually I turned a corner in my mind, because at first I was like, no, thanks. But then I got excited about, like, I want to fix this operationally. There's a lot of good stuff here. There's a lot of good philosophy. And so I did that for about 4 years. And then where I am now is 1 year in the books of my own business, Made In-House, which is a in-house consultancy, working with brands directly to help them build their in-house agencies.
Great. So a lot to kind of dig into there. I mean, so CPB, you were there for about 6 years. Is that right? Yeah. What were maybe some of the more memorable campaigns or work that you worked on there? I mean, is there a person pretty big? I mean, they have some pretty household names under their roster.
Yeah. I mean, Crispin was especially at the time, you were pumping out so much volume. I mean, we were just, it had a little bit of a reputation for being this like crazy sweatshop, and it wasn't in that, like, no one was forcing you. We did it to ourselves. Like, your offices had futons in it. Like, you were sleeping there overnight. You were just, because there was so much opportunity, whether it was Burger King or Volkswagen. I at an early time there was given the pitch for Dominos. So I won that account and did a lot of the early work on Dominos. The thing that I think I'm most famous for is the pizza tracker for Dominos, which is something that I would reference a lot. I don't know if it's my favorite. I mean, you just made so much stuff there. I can't even remember everything, but the pizza tracker, for example, I will reference a lot because I like that it was a solution to a problem that wasn't an ad.
Yeah.
Right. So Domino's really came to us. This was kind of when online ordering wasn't the thing. And that was the assignment. It was like, how do we come up with a campaign to get more people to order online? There's a variety of reasons why ordering online is good for Domino's. The ticket price is higher. There's lower margin of error. They don't have to pay for somebody to answer the phone. There's a lot of good reasons for it. And typically what people would do is, and I remember that's what my boss at the time said, was like, come up with just don't do like $1 off ordering online. Like, don't try to come up with something that isn't giving it away for free, which is something that most people would do because they thought, well, if I can get you to just try it once, then maybe you'll get interested in the idea of doing it online. So anyway, I simultaneously, to work on Domino's, or at least as the leadership team, you have to go to pizza school. That's maybe, I don't know if they still do it, but
yeah,
it was like a week-long training to be like a manager. And I learned that the whole system was attached to like every Domino's literally has a physical button between each station because they're all it's all about speed and efficiency. And you as a local Domino's store, as a manager, you get bonus based on that efficiency. So I'm like, wait a minute. At any given moment, I know when an order's been taken, I hit a button. I know when a pizza is being prepped, I hit a button. I know when it's in the oven, it takes 6 minutes. I hit a button. I know when you have all this information.
Yeah.
This is cool. Why don't we make a thing? And we also knew from an insights perspective that like when people ordered pizza or food and hung up the phone, they were kind of left with like, I don't know. I don't know if it's.
I was just thinking, being an agency guy and coming up on the account and strategy side, I was in my planner head going, you have a consumer that with online ordering, especially the netherworld that goes into, and an insight is consumers they have no idea what is the stats, that control. They have no control. And you bring that to life. I'm backing my way into this brief as you're talking.
and so we originally said, well, this is perfect. You already have the information. Let's create a consumer facing, dashboard. At the moment, it was like this little pill looking thing, and it just had these sections, and it just pulsed and told you where it was. And again, it could tell you, the name of the person doing the prep and it told you the name of the delivery driver, because all that information was in their system. So also you knew like, oh, Ron is coming. He's going to be here soon. And just sort of knowing the name of the person is like helped you. And then originally it was exclusive for online orders. Now I think if you call or whatever, you can use the pizza tracker no matter what. But that's what it was. So we came up with a tool that didn't cheapen the brand or create a discount. And it did more than, we didn't do like ads. There weren't like a TV ad or anything. It was just like that. And it worked really, really well. So I like to reference that just because it reminds me, like, focus on the problem. Like, I think a lot of times in our industry, we jump so quickly to like, what's the creative execution? What's the creative? What's the creative? What's the creative? And I'm like, spend 80% of your time on the problem, the business challenge, the audience, the insight. Do that. And then like 20% of your time on, because it'll be there. It'll be like, oh, here's the obvious solution. So that was really, really fun. I worked.
Can we hire you to be a politician or a president or something too? I think focus on the problem. That's probably gonna be the title of this podcast. But it's like, it's so true in so many other things too, because we become so about everything else, It
was funny. One of my, Andrew Keller, who is the executive creative director right under Bogusky there, he said a thing to me once that which is interesting. I remember I went into his office. I was mad about something, or there was some issue. I think we had a campaign that was sold, and then there was feedback. And I went in there and I was expecting him to be like, I'll call him up and tell him, like, blah, blah, blah. And I remember he didn't. And he said the one thing that has probably been the best advice I've ever had in my career. And he said, dude, he's like, the minute you learn to love solving problems is the minute you're going to learn that you love this job.
Yeah.
And as a creative person, that just hit me really hard. It's like, that is the job. is like, and so, and I think when I showed up at VaynerMedia years later, I was all of a sudden confronted, surprisingly, with like a pretty big problem. Like it just was like, this is insane. Like the department's set up weird. We don't even have strategy. It was just so foreign to me. And
Yeah.
I was like, at that point, like, no, I want to solve this problem. And I think it's one of the reasons I started Made in-house. Trust me, every in-house agency is just a big problem. No one has figured it out. It's all over the place. And I like to pop in and go, this is fun. This is fun to fix these things.
Yeah. Well, the whole in-house thing is, brands think they can cherry pick. I can hire a writer, a graphic designer, a creative person, account person, and we solved it. I know, there's method to the madness, but I do, transitioning to the VaynerMedia thing. It's always been fascinating, working in a New York agency, working at other agencies, now owning an agency. Gary has the anti-agency vibe. He's the anti-New York agency. And I'm like, you hire 800 people and they all work in New York. You very much are a New York agency. I don't care what you call it or what you say. There's just a way that things become when you start hiring people that have worked at a million other agencies. So I don't know how. I know he has culture, and I'm not knocking that at all. I'm just more talking philosophically about, the anti-agency theme. But it sounds like you may have brought some of that anarchy, because again, you got to be operational. It's one thing to move fast, but it's a whole nother thing to operationally solve problems and get things done.
Well, I do think it's I mean, it definitely is. It's a big agency based in New York, but I think that's also an interesting thing where, because that's something I never really, that was kind of his narrative. My narrative is very less like, it's like everybody has potential to be great. Like, I don't need to but that's, I'm not a CEO of it. I don't own the company. And I think that was a lot of what he did was like, hey, he's calling me, sorry. It was like, I'm going to kind of knock everything else down to kind of build myself up. Because you can't really just say, oh, big New York agency. It's like, there's so many different colors in that statement.
Yeah.
There's, Crispin was a big, not New York, but they were big agencies. 72 and Sunny's a big agency. Drogo, Wyden's a big agency. These are all great.
McCann.
McCann's, and it's like, so I don't really know. It's not that. I think the thing where Gary and I and kind of what sparked me eventually to say, okay, I'm on the same page with this guy, and so I'll move out to New York, was not the agency or anything, but just the mindset. I don't think there's anything wrong with business model or the model or anything. It's the mindset. And that was very much I believe very much in making versus talking about stuff forever, and focus grouping and getting 1 million people. And a lot of agencies located anywhere in the world historically have made their money by selling a service that requires a lot of FTEs, full-time employees, to spend a lot of time to make something that costs a lot of money because they get the markup on that. That is the model. And that made so much sense back then. Come into today's world where marketers need the exact opposite. They're like, I need a whole bunch of really awesome content. I need it yesterday, and I need it for half the cost, but I still need it to be really, really good. That is maybe the difference. If I were to say we're, at Vayner, the goal was we want to be that. And that does stand in a little bit of contrast to a quote unquote big New York agency with an old model. But the reality is, and one of the things that even everybody struggles with, even at Vayner we struggle with, is how do we really do that? How do we get into a system that can produce the volume of quality for the cost that is required in a world where brands have a Snapchat lens to a Super Bowl commercial and everything in between? And that was difficult to do. And again, I'm certainly not a CFO, but I have a lot of empathy for the CFO there, where it's no, we have to make money. We can't, which again is why I was well, let me see if I can make this work in-house. But but also I think, he's a salesman. He's a motivational speaker. His tool is his mouth. He talks and he likes controversy. He likes saying stuff that gets everyone stirred up. And so that's just kind of his shtick. That's his thing.
How was the culture there? I mean, was it everything he made it seem? I mean, I know no sales, is, the end product can never live up to, some of the statements that are made or the salesmanship that happens. But how was the culture there? Because
it was good. I mean, it was, I remember when I got there, I was actually originally kind of shocked. And I think maybe because this was the first time in my career where I was the old person, just because everybody felt so young. I do remember being like, man, I'm not used to this many feelings. It was like at Crispin, it was just like, you just shut up and you do it. And if someone says this isn't right, do it again. You just went back. And I was so in this military, but all of a sudden I came to a spot where I came in and said, hey, I don't think this is right. Let's try this and this and this. And the reaction was like, no, you've hurt my feelings. I'm like, I don't know how to deal with this. Go. But I think the culture was fine. The biggest challenge for me was it wasn't a culture rooted in creativity. It's a media company. Founded by a business guy. So it was a lot about just efficiency and just making stuff and I was charged with coming in and that was a little bit of the healthy struggle was no. This stuff matters. Humans are emotional people. So the actual creative that we make needs to be able to connect with that emotion. But it's not in there. So the culture is really sort of hustle, Gary V, entrepreneur, starting businesses, and it was a challenge. I like a culture that's a little bit more celebratory of the product that we make. So for example, when we would have our town hall meetings or our all agency meetings, it was the first agency where I had ever worked where we didn't show creative work that we had done recently. And that was hard, and I don't know. I think it was, and I would always ask Gary, can we do that? Can we do that? And I think my sense is he wanted this. He's like, no, I'll have the microphone. This is the Gary V thing. This isn't the work.
Yeah.
And to me, I was always even working at places like Crispin, where it's Alex Bogusky at the time was the Michael Jordan of advertising.
Yeah.
Still just all about the work. He didn't like to speak. He didn't like to do any of that stuff. And so I was very used to that. So I started kind of having my own town halls that were just creative showcases. I was it's important for us. We're big enough. It's important for us to see the work, to celebrate the work, to see the work that we don't know that we even made because another team made it. I believe that's a really healthy culture. It's around the product that we make. But I would say the culture is fine. It was friendly. It was very big. And, but I prefer personally a culture that's more around the product we make. And I think that is what actually really unites and brings people together. Sometimes the culture at Vayner was difficult just because it was kind of the byproduct of whatever Gary was saying that week. And so he'd be off on it. Now we're doing this. And everyone's scrambling to be now we're that agency. He's now we're doing this. And we're now we're that agency. So sometimes it was a little challenging, but for the most part, it was I can't say it was at least during my time there was nothing there was no ooh, that's the golden ticket of a culture. I was
yeah,
it was fine.
We talked about this a little bit pre-episode, it's got to be a little tough because look, everybody wants some credit, right?
Sure.
We're human beings, and you strike me as not necessarily, a little bit I know about you. I think you take pride in the work, but it doesn't have to have Steve's name on it every time necessarily. I'm sensing that about you.
Yeah.
But whether it's you or whether it's the fiefdom you had there, that the guys you're motivating, when it's all about one person, and look, he's super successful. I look up to him in certain ways, I am not a hater, but it is always fascinating to me of wondering how you have longevity there and self-motivation when it doesn't seem like anyone else gets the idea credit. And I guess you just have to be okay with that there, because I'm sure, I hear things out of his mouth and I'm like, this guy's got more ideas than anybody I know. And I know that's natural, but whose mouth did this really come out of? Because I've heard some things that he said that I've heard you say, and I'm not, again, trying to create this divide. It's more interest in, how you keep people motivated when, the ideas seem to all credit one individual.
Yeah. I mean, I think philosophically why you maybe have heard a lot of the things we've said similarly is because we agree there. I think I'll typically say them a little bit differently, et cetera. But when it comes to like creative and things like that, my philosophy as a leader has always been to empower pretty much everybody else and to give that credit to everybody else. Cause that is like catnip to a cat, they want that and they want to grow and do more of that. And so, but I do think it's a bit of a challenge, for if, and again, I really don't know what it's like to have 8 million followers on Instagram and to be stopped everywhere I go. And we would, like, everywhere we go, it's like, we're getting selfies, we're people shaking hands, like, and and to me that actually, I think I'm quite kind and social, but I don't like that. I'd be like, even I would start to get noticed a little, just like, you're Steve, just by association. And I'd be like, yep. And I'm going to dinner. See you later. Like, he loves that. And that's why he's so good at it. Like, he genuinely loves that. There's no act. It is him and he loves it. I'm more of an introvert, I guess. But I think when your whole like livelihood is being in the spotlight, that is his thing. Like, he's the one with the microphone. He's the one talking. I think you just naturally, sort of by default, you're not used to saying like, oh, I'm going to give this spotlight to somebody else. Yeah. I never felt like there was it was just weird. It was like, I find myself defending him a lot, when people want to talk about him or whatever, because it's like, I found him to be one of the better kind of human beings that I've ever known. Like, just, he has such a kind heart. Yeah. He really does care. But I do think he gets in this moment where that grapples with the celebrityism and just sort of what you're used to. So I don't find that if there's ever been a time where I'm like, dude, I think you should have given the credit to somebody else, or I think this or this. I've never found it like intentional or malicious. It was just like, you kind of are in that zone where that's your brand and that's your vehicle. And you feel like you're the best sounding board to tell the world, hey, this is what we're doing, and I'm doing it, and I'm doing it, and I'm doing it, because you feel like you have to put it all on your shoulders for it to be successful. So it's kind of an interesting scenario where you would see it. And sometimes there'd be people that would kind of come up to me and be like, man, like, we came up with that. Like, would it have been that hard for him to say thanks to the team or whatever? And it's like, he doesn't mean it. I promise you. I've worked with people who do mean it in the past, and I promise it's different. For me personally, I think we work well together because I was okay with that. I'm fine with it being like, fine, take the, like, and maybe I would be better. Maybe I'd be further along in my career if I was more bullish about those things. Yeah. I just don't have it in me. And so I think we work well together, where I would be like, like, I don't need that part. Yeah. But I would feel it sometimes when people who were on my team did need it, and I would.
And that was kind of more the question a little bit. See all your team that's doing all these things, and
being a CCO there, at least in the beginning part, was a bit of a challenge because you were this middleman. Like, okay, all the creatives there were like, cool, we have a creative leader, and he knows what we want, and and then kind of being the middleman of trying to go, hey, well, this is where Gary's taking the agency, or this is what he said, and So it was definitely a challenge versus, like I said, agencies where creativity is the culture. Doesn't matter your position. Everyone's like, we know the North Star. Like, whether I could be the custodial person there, and I know, like, Crispin was like, it did not matter what job you had. You knew what the North Star of that agency was. I was at Vayner. That was probably if there was a number one challenge, was like, you had no idea what the North Star was. It just depended on the week, you know? And
Yeah.
I had my North Star, and sometimes Gary had his, and sometimes somebody else had theirs. And that was a bit of a challenge, was just kind of trying to do that.
So I attribute this line to you or him. Creativity is the ultimate variable of success.
So that's his line.
Yeah.
That's his line. I would find at times where I'm like, I would say it back to him when I felt like he wasn't, when he was sort of poo-pooing or just kind of going beyond the creative. I'm like, you say yourself, it's the variable success. Like,
I love it.
Yeah, no, that's his line for sure.
Cool. Is the platform, for him? I mean, because I almost think, Gary is the ultimate variable of success with VaynerMedia, and I think so. Like, I mean, and he even says it. Like, if he went away, where does the agency go? And so, I mean, I don't know that that's true or not true, but we'll see how he goes. But I look up to him he's been super successful, and I love how he kind of, shoots the middle bird at, anyone and everyone that's like doubts him. And, but I do wonder, like, when you do that, how do you foster, and how could you foster entrepreneurship when the only entrepreneur really allowed to be the entrepreneur is the leader, so I wonder when that will be an issue, because you really he needs sheep more than anything else in a way. So I don't know when that rubber hits the road, but hey, success is obviously there. So
no, like I said, I don't know what it's like to wear his shoes, although he gave me a pair of his shoes. So I guess this is the one time when that analogy makes a lot of sense. One of his many K-Swiss shoes. But that's an ultimate challenge, I think, to any leader. And again, he is a special, there's a reason he's successful, and there's a reason he's who he is. He has a lot of character traits, especially work ethic, that's unlike anything I've ever seen. And I even saw this at Crispin too. When Alex left Crispin, it was like, whoa, like he hadn't really prepared the bench. And I think that exit was a little unexpected for Alex, but that was definitely a challenge for a lot of observation I made there. Was there was a lot of the C-suite there. We had chief strategy officer, we had just what most agencies have, was like, I always felt like it is important, not even for me as an individual, just as an agency. I always felt that it was important for VaynerMedia to be able to build a reputation amongst the industry and amongst potential clients that was, Gary's the CEO of it, but there is a lot to this place. There's a lot of other stuff you may or may not know of, because you would look across the board and I'd be like, there is some of the best talent I'd ever worked for, especially in the media side. I mean, there were some people on the media side, strategists, of course, creative. And it was like, I really feel like we need to, and in fact, right before I left, we finally did hire an individual to just kind of come in and be sort of PR and like grow these stories and so it just wasn't Gary. Because either way, Gary's always polarizing. So half potential clients like him and the other half hate him or whatever, or don't like him. And I was like, either way, it's important to pull that curtain back a little bit, because there's 900 people here who make this place work. And I think it's important to, and it's one thing where, especially on the creative side, I always like, and I'm always admire creative leaders who, work to get their executive creative directors or group creative directors, to get them some airtime, to get them on podcasts or writing articles or whatever. I just think that's really important. It's hard. I understand as a creative leader, you're like, there is this natural sense. Everyone has a little insecurity of like, well, I don't want this person right below me to seem better than me, because then they'll take my job or whatever. I just think at the end of the day, like, even if they do take your job, like if you've grown them to be able to take your job, you've done your job. But I find that's always the better approach, is to always be building your army, because that's how you can scale. And I still haven't seen, even in the year since I've been out of Vayner, haven't seen that that's been done very well. And so, yeah, I think if he did leave, it would be kind of like, what the heck? I don't know if anyone would
it's
know a name.
VaynerMedia. I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, his name is the thing. So, yeah. But I don't think he's leaving. So I hope he's not. But,
no, I hope he's not either. But transition just for a minute, to, we're building Made in House. I know, just like everyone, that COVID's kind of like rocked the boat, I'm sure, with just, opportunities and projects being paused and different things like that. But I am curious philosophically, your creative North Star now, if you so call it. I know we've talked a little bit about the media company side, so maybe dive into that a bit. But, what's your kind of overall philosophy for where you see things going, both, I guess, post-COVID and, if there's going to be an impact, but I'd love to kind of get some thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I think my hope is, on the other side of this, I do think you're seeing the industry, or for the most part, you're seeing a lot of brands learn a valuable lesson, which is like just to really, really focus on the insight and the needs of the consumer. I think right out of the gates, all the brands did that usual thing of just like, in these unprecedented times, just kind of making an ad and not really realizing, wait a minute.
Cue dramatic music.
Yeah, like pianos. And it's like, and then there was a second wave that I think was better, where all of a sudden brands took a step back and they thought, okay, this is unlike anything we've ever experienced. People are quarantined in their homes. Their kids are out of school. They're trying to learn from home. Parents are going crazy. And they've had to then go, now that and it was also one of the first times, at least in my lifetime, where I've ever seen, like, there was like a poll that was like 70% of people do not want to hear from brands right now. It's just the last thing you want to hear. When you're someone that's like, I don't even know if I'm going to have money to buy mac and cheese. I don't want a mac and cheese, and it was like, everyone was grappling with this. And then brands started to get smart and go, okay, well, and I think also brands will start to focus more on having meaning that transcends just the thing they sell. This is why we exist as a brand. We can have a reason. We can have a place in culture that is beyond just the product that we sell or the service we sell. So brands started to say, well, we have that. And now, given this current reality, how can we go in and answer and meet the needs of our consumer based on their situation? And so, you were seeing some fun things that, or a lot of brands were also saying, well, we need to help. So let's use our media dollars to remind people that they need to stay home, or they need to wear a mask, or they need to do whatever. So my hope is that once we get, back to where we're out in society and doing these things, that brands will not forget, even when things are completely normal or whatever, that like, let's still spend that time. Let's still spend 80% of the time on the problem and on the audience. Let's spend way more of that. So, and it's not necessarily brand. I guess my message would be more to creatives, just because that's the realm I've been in.
Yeah.
Like, I want creative people at agencies or in-house or whatever to go, always, no matter what the situation is spend all the time you can understanding the problem and understanding your audience. Don't jump so quickly to just like, I just want to make an ad to talk at people, versus like, spend the time, invest the time in them, and then you're going to talk with them,
Yep. Oh, I did a webinar last week for Greenville Home Builders. They invited me on to do it for their association or whatever. And I talked about customer-centric marketing is going to win the day. And I think it's down that path. Product central or service centric versus customer centric, and solving solutions for solving problems that consumers have with your marketing, instead of speeds, feeds, features, all those things.
That's right.
So I think you're going to see the ones that can do that even elevate higher, because to your point with the surveys, and look, it's so funny, all the stuff that's going on, I've told people these snowballs were rolling downhill. A lot of these themes, consumers don't want to be marketed to, consumers don't want to be sold, consumers don't want to hear from brands. These things, these are like little bonfires that have gas being poured on them with everything going on, in a lot of ways. Companies needing, being a little inflated, needing to be leaner, like that, all that was trending. And now we're just like,
and being able to, the quarantine, I think, has been interesting just because it's forced a very scrappy style of production, which is something that you just need to do no matter what. You need to be able to, back to what we were talking about way earlier, was like just to be able to make the volume and still make it good at the cost. And so it's been really interesting there. Is like, how do you go back to, again, once we get on the other side of this, how do you maintain those principles of like, well, we know how to shoot this we know how to be more cost effective. I think agency structure, like you just said, is like, you don't need 18 levels of chief global creative, galactic creative office. You don't need it, and for the first time in my career, you're seeing those kinds of individuals, unfortunately, but you're seeing them let go. And you're like, wait a minute, what? And it's like, at the end of the day, when you can no longer charge a client just to have huge exorbitant salaries, you do have to focus on, I don't think there's room anymore. If you're a creative, especially, there's no more room for just thinkers and idea people. You have to be able to do something that makes that idea real in some way. Like, it's just, you can't have the 18 people to screw in a light bulb. You've got to be able to go, hey, I can come up with an idea and I can at least make a prototype of it, or I can at least do this, or I can at least do this. And I think that is awesome. We have the tools. It's so easy to make and to create. And there's just, if there's anything really, is like, that's going to be the thing. COVID-19 or whatever won't erase advertising, but it's going to make those who fail to say, hey, I need to be able to offer more than just an idea. I need to be able to do something to make that idea a reality.
Yeah, the kumbaya moments of, 12 people around the creative director, and let's share our ideas. That one's no good. This one's good. I don't know. I think those days are
gone. You can still have those 12 people, but they're all making every one of those ideas. It's like,
that's
all right,
right.
That one, get that one made. Let's do that one. Like, that's the world we have to be in. And then also the creative director's like, and I've got 2 I'm going to be making. I'll see you guys tomorrow and we'll look at what we got. Like, it's got to be that.
When we were, we built Radical in that very mold. We're very no bureaucracy, and our creative director, he's working on his 2 and grading the other 4, or not grading is the wrong word, but evaluating, assisting, seasoning,
There you go.
But it's fascinating. What's the future hold for Steve Babcock?
Geez, that's the golden question. It's, this last year has been really probably one of the more interesting years of my career. I waited kind of a long time to try the entrepreneurial thing, and maybe was emotionally the worst time, just with kids and all that, but it taught me a lot. It was like, wait, I can do this. Like, it's, I don't know if I'm really an entrepreneur, but it was I was always scared of doing it. And I got out there, I was like, wait, I can do this. And I've really, really enjoyed working on the brand side. And like I said, every time I step in, it's like, awesome. This is a great problem. We can easily fix this. And I've really enjoyed watching that transformation and just being, there's a lot of, I don't know. I've worked in advertising for 20 years, and not until Made in House was like the first time I've ever had someone thank me, for helping them out. There's just, I don't know why. I think maybe the industry of advertising is such a thankless job, and to go in there and have conversations after you spend like a month with a team, and to have like the lead creative there come to you after and just be like, I want to thank you so much for how much you've helped me. And it's just, I don't know, I feel really good about it. I will say the travel that is required for consultants is like a bit much. It's a bit heavy, but probably is no surprise. You know, I remember March 12th exactly was the day that all of my stuff just went, we're going to put this on pause. We're going to dry. Da, da, da. So it's Made in House is very much on pause. I mean, I'm doing like a few things here and there, but not at the level that I would want. And I don't think half the world is doing the things at the level they want. You know? So right now it's a little bit of a wait and see. Like, is this going to, what kind of, you know, how long is this going to take? But also, you know, thinking a little bit about, I wonder if, you know, I've been noodling a little bit about how to take Made in House and turn it into something that's a little bit more of an agency based on a lot of the philosophies that I've learned by spending time in house. And I've got a couple concepts where I'm like, that would work really well. And I'll admit there are times where I'm like, man, I miss having a big team of people. I do. Sometimes I miss, like, I don't know if it's an agency, but, or maybe it's a brand if they want to start an in-house, you know, if there's something that comes, I do miss that sort of like, cause even as a consultant, even if you spend some time there, you're still an outsider.
Yeah.
And I kind of miss that little like family mentality. So what's next is as good a guess as anybody can have, and just kind of like everybody taking it sort of week by week. Like I said, I'm a father with three kids, and 2 of them are teenagers, so that's a big part of my life, and just kind of figuring it out. But I don't know. I think after a year of Made in House, I've learned that the pivot can be fun and can be good. So I'm okay going like, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll become an professional esports player. I've been getting pretty good at Fortnite with my kid over the past year, so maybe I'll be the oldest professional esports guy. Who knows?
Hey, there's your media company right there. Twitch is blowing up. With just watching people play video games. You know,
you ever seen that old white bald guy on Twitch? He's rad. So, I don't even.
One of my dear friends is actually. I wouldn't call him necessarily. He's definitely older. I think you and I are similar in age, probably more than you realize. I'm 43.
I just turned 43. Yeah,
there we go. So, but my good friend Scott Cole, he is the voice of NBA 2K, and he's huge. Scott, look him up. Scott Coltrane. But he's huge in esports, and as a personality, he's a hell of a video game player, but he's personalities, done stuff with Madden, and he's been on NFL Network and done a lot of things. But and he's the old bald dude on esports right now. But I think there's room for more.
I love it, man. Esports is. I mean, I'm a small investor. I'm no Gary Vee, but I'm a very small investor in a couple esports things. And and again, I have a son who's very into it. I love that world. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a place where brands need to get more involved in, beyond just like NASCAR logos on jerseys and things. It's a place where, man, it's like creativity is just waiting to explode in esports. Cause right now it's still just sponsorships and blah, 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 versus like get in there and come up with something. Cause I think a lot of brands and a lot of the world just doesn't understand how gigantic esports really is. I mean, it is beyond. So it's a lot of fun. So I don't know. We'll see.
I love it.
If I could have my way, I'd become a talk show host. So maybe I'll be on the Tonight Show. Who knows?
Well, the more of these you do, maybe we're building on your reel, if nothing else.
There you go. That's all I'm really doing. Yeah, this is all for me. This is all for me.
Steve, where can everybody keep up with you? What's the best way to find you?
Well, fortunately, I'm one of 2 Steve Babcocks in the world that I've ever been able to find. The other one is a karate instructor, I think in Indiana. So if you Google Steve Babcock and get the karate guy, I've tried to hit him up because he owns SteveBabcock.com, but it turns out he's got a pretty healthy karate instructor business going on. But we're pretty active on Instagram. At Steve Happens is my handle there, or LinkedIn, or just email stevebabcock@gmail.com. So I'm pretty much on the internet.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and look forward to kind of continuing our dialogue. And it's fascinating. I know we just scratched the surface on a lot of the brands and campaigns you worked on, but I think there's some really good nuggets here for just, your philosophy with creative, your philosophy with teams. And I know that our audience will really appreciate your insight, and I appreciate you just spending the time.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me. It's been a lot of fun, it's been a good conversation. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's all for today's episode of the Radical Marketing Podcast. I want to appreciate Steve Babcock for coming on. Follow along Steve online. You can also follow along with Radical at radical_results on Instagram or radical.company. We'll see you next time.